You just did it. You bought something that, if you're being honest, you couldn't really afford. Or you agreed to a proposal that made you feel uneasy. In that first second, you feel a rush of dopamine, almost euphoria. There it is, in your hands. Shiny, new, with that new product smell. It's yours. But then on the way home, or at night when the house is filled with a deafening silence, it arrives. That cold, twisting, unpleasant feeling in your stomach. A voice that whispers, "What have you done?" This voice isn't just your conscience. It's an alarm signal, triggered by the amygdala deep inside your brain. And what your brain does next to silence that voice is far more important than the purchase itself. It's an unconscious mechanism that determines who you believe you are, shaping the very fabric of your identity. Now imagine I want to make you believe a blatant lie. For instance, to convince you that the most boring, monotonous task in the world was actually fascinating. How much would I have to pay you? Common sense suggests that the more money, the stronger your conviction. But what if the truth is the exact opposite? What if, to make you believe your own lie with all your heart, I only needed to pay you as little as possible? Just one single measly dollar. It sounds like madness, like a glitch in logic. But it is precisely this paradox, discovered by social psychologist Leon Festinger in the mid-20th century, that exposed one of the most powerful and hidden mechanisms of human consciousness, the master algorithm of our self-deception. This is the story of cognitive dissonance theory. It's about how we unconsciously justify our poor choices to avoid going insane from internal conflict. By the end of this story, you will understand why your brain is not an impartial machine for seeking truth, but rather a comfort-seeking machine, wired for survival. You will learn how this invisible mechanism makes you value what you suffered for, defend decisions you doubt, and how it secretly governs your most important beliefs, from political views and consumer preferences to your choice of a life partner. Prepare to meet the true master of your mind, the quiet puppeteer pulling the strings of your beliefs. Meet David. He sees himself as a socially conscious person. He recycles, donates to environmental charities, and always tells his friends how important it is to care for the planet. And today, David bought a car, a huge, shiny, all-wheel drive SUV with a V8 engine that guzzles gas as if there's no tomorrow. He sits behind the wheel, inhaling the sharp, intoxicating smell of new leather, feeling the low rumble and vibration of power under the hood. He feels good. But then his eyes fall on the fuel economy sticker, and in his mind two thoughts collide with a deafening screech. The first, I am a person who cares about the environment. The second, I am the owner of this gas-guzzling monster. This moment of collision is the trigger. It's the beginning of cognitive dissonance. In his landmark 1957 work, psychologist Leon Festinger defined this state as an acute mental conflict. It arises when two incompatible ideas exist simultaneously in your consciousness. These ideas are called cognitions. In David's case, they are, I am a good, responsible person, and I have committed an irresponsible act. They cannot coexist peacefully in one mind. One must either destroy the other or be changed beyond recognition. A civil war inside the mind has just been declared. And this isn't just a figure of speech. It's not just a feeling. Thanks to fMRI technology, we can see this conflict in action. When you experience dissonance, a specific area of your brain lights up with activity, the anterior cingulate cortex. It's a kind of neural alarm system, your internal error detector. And here's the crucial part. The same area activates when you make a mistake on a test or feel sharp physical pain. To your brain, a mental contradiction is as real an alarm signal as touching a hot stove. It is a biological state of emergency. This neural alarm is unbearable. The brain cannot ignore it. It demands an immediate, almost reflexive response. It must silence this alarm, and as quickly as possible. But how? This leads us to a state Festinger called psychological pain. And this pain is much more powerful than it seems, because it threatens the very foundation of your existence. Now David is home. He can't stop thinking about the car. He becomes irritable. His mouth is dry. When his wife mentions the SUV looks too big for their garage, he snaps. He defends his choice with a fury disproportionate to the situation. In that moment, he becomes one of the 70% of consumers who, according to studies, experience the same dissonance after a major purchase. He frantically searches the internet for articles on the safety of large vehicles, ignoring any negative reviews. The internal tension builds, squeezing his chest like a vice. It poisons his evening, his thoughts, his mood. He isn't just in a bad mood. He is in actual pain. This is the second stage, the onset of psychological discomfort. Festinger argued that this state is as real and as motivating as hunger or thirst. Imagine you are desperately thirsty. You can't think about anything else. Your brain is entirely focused on a single goal: find water. Cognitive dissonance works exactly the same way. It creates a powerful motivation to reduce this discomfort, forcing your entire cognitive system into emergency mode. The brain demands an immediate resolution to the internal conflict. Logic, facts, other people's opinions, all of it takes a back seat to this primal need for harmony. Rationality is a luxury your brain can't afford under stress. But why is this pain so intense? It's not about the car. It's not even about the environment. The real underlying source of the pain is a direct threat to your self-esteem and your self-concept. David's conflict actually sounds like this. I thought I was a smart, good, and consistent person. But my action proves I might be a stupid, selfish hypocrite. Dissonance doesn't attack your beliefs about the world. It attacks your most fundamental beliefs about yourself, your internal narrative of who you are. And to protect this fragile self-image, your brain is willing to do anything, including a complete falsification of reality. And so the brain stands at a crossroads, desperately searching for an exit from this highway of anxiety. To end the pain, it has 3 primary paths, 3 escape strategies. But the most obvious, honest, and rational one, the one that requires admitting a mistake, is nearly impossible for most of us. Let's imagine for a second this fantastic, almost heroic scenario. The next morning, David wakes up with the metallic taste of defeat in his mouth. He says, "I made a mistake." He drives back to the dealership, signs the papers with a heavy heart, loses money, but returns the SUV. He comes home in his old car and honestly tells his family and himself, "I was wrong. My ego got the better of me." Imagine the level of self-control required for that. What willpower? To admit defeat not only to yourself, but to the entire world. This is the first and rarest strategy, changing your behavior. Why is it so rarely seen in the wild? Because this path first requires you to double the pain in order to eventually relieve it. Admitting you're wrong is a direct blow to the ego, a voluntary acceptance of the status of someone who makes mistakes. Your brain is, in essence, a cognitive miser. It is evolutionarily wired to conserve energy and avoid pain. It sees this as a completely inefficient and costly route. Why go through additional humiliation when there are easier roundabout paths? And this doesn't just apply to purchases. It applies to your entire life. Think of the person who spent 10 years on a law degree only to realize they hate their job. To quit? That means admitting that 10 years of your one and only life were a mistake, a colossal dissonance. And instead of changing their behavior, the brain chooses another path. It convinces itself that stability is more important than happiness, that the job isn't so bad after all. We stay in toxic relationships because leaving means admitting we made a mistake in our choice, erasing the years invested in that person. Because this honest path is so painful, your brain has developed a much more elegant and insidious method. A strategy that requires no action in the real world, no loss of money or status. It is pure mental alchemy. If you can't change reality to match your beliefs, you simply change your beliefs to match the reality that has already occurred. You just get inside your own head and rewrite the code. The year is 1959, in the dusty halls of Stanford University. Imagine you're a student volunteer in an experiment by Leon Festinger. You are led into a drab room that smells of old books and given a task. For half an hour, you must move 12 wooden spools from a tray into a box, then take them out, and start over. Again, and again. The only sound is the monotonous, dull thud of wood against cardboard. When your muscles are numb with boredom, you're given a new task. Another half hour of turning 48 square pegs on a board. A quarter turn, clockwise, one by one. It is, without a doubt, the most monotonous, pointless, and mind-numbing activity of your life. Now for the interesting part. As you leave, exhausted by the pointlessness of it all, the experimenter asks you for a favor. He needs you to tell the next participant that the task was incredibly interesting and engaging. In other words, he wants you to lie. For this small lie, one group of students was paid $20, a very handsome sum at the time, equivalent to almost $200 today. Another group was paid just one single, measly dollar. And this is where your brain falls into a trap. The student who received $20 has a solid external justification. I lied, but I was well paid for it. His internal world is fine. There is almost no dissonance. But the student who received only $1 faces an irreconcilable conflict. I am an honest person, but I just lied for practically nothing. There is no external justification. And to get rid of this acute psychological pain, his brain pulls off a brilliant trick. It doesn't change the fact of the lie. It changes the original belief. It performs an act of mental surgery and convinces itself that the task wasn't actually that boring after all. Maybe it was even meditative. When all the participants were later surveyed on how much they enjoyed the task, the results sent shockwaves through the world of psychology. The group that received $20 honestly rated it as boring and dull, but the group that received only $1 rated it as quite interesting and even pleasant. Think about that. A smaller reward led to a greater internal conviction. This experiment proved something fundamental and unsettling. More often than not, our beliefs don't shape our actions. On the contrary, our actions force our brain to desperately and retroactively change our beliefs to justify what we have already done. We are not rational creatures. We are rationalizing creatures. But what if the action is too significant to simply rewrite your opinion of it? What if, like David, you bought an SUV, but deep down you still know it harms the planet? Simply convincing yourself it was fun won't work. In that case, the brain resorts to a third, most sophisticated strategy. It doesn't change the behavior. And it doesn't change the core belief. It builds an impenetrable fortress of justifications around its decision, cherry-picking convenient facts and recruiting allies. It becomes a personal lawyer for its own ego. Let's go back to David. His brain, this personal lawyer, immediately gets to work. You can almost hear the alarm click off, feel the knot in his stomach loosen as he says, perhaps to himself, perhaps to his wife. But it's incredibly safe. Think of the kids, the steel frame, the airbags. Or, we always wanted to go on nature trips on the weekends, now we can conquer any terrain. It's an investment in our leisure time. Or even, I'm supporting the national economy by buying such a substantial American car. He doesn't change his basic belief that the car harms the planet. No. He builds a high, impenetrable wall of new, convenient justifications around that uncomfortable fact. This is the third strategy, adding new, consonant cognitions. Your brain actively, almost feverishly, seeks out any information that confirms your choice. And simultaneously, as if on command, it puts on blinders, diligently ignoring anything that contradicts it. This mechanism is called confirmation bias, and it's one of the most powerful mental traps. Understand, your brain is not seeking objective truth. It's seeking psychological homeostasis, a state of calm. This is why, after you buy a car, you suddenly start noticing many more cars of the same model on the road. Your brain is scanning reality for proof that you've joined the right, prestigious club. It's looking for its tribe. And don't think this is just a clever trick of your consciousness. It is the perfectly calibrated foundation of the modern consumer market. Listen, studies show that over 70% of consumers, after making a major purchase, begin to purposefully and almost obsessively search for positive reviews of the product. Not before, but after. Why? To silence the icy whisper of that inner voice of doubt, known as buyer's remorse. To convince themselves of the rightness of a choice already made, a choice that is irreversible. The market doesn't just sell you products, it sells you absolution. It sells you peace of mind by managing your dissonance after you've already handed over your money. And so, the internal conflict is resolved. The brain has built its fortress of justifications with arrow slits that look out only upon convenient facts. It has found a way to calm itself. But at what cost? The cost of objective reality distorted beyond recognition. This cozy inner world, where your choice is always the only correct one, is the very state your psyche strives for. It is a fragile illusion of harmony, paid for with self-deception. Imagine a young man, an American college student. The air around him smells of old books and cheap beer. He dreams of joining an elite fraternity. But to get in, he has to go through hell, a ritual they call Hell Week. For weeks he performs absurd, humiliating tasks. He stands in freezing water at night. He endures ritualistic hazing from upperclassmen. He is deprived of sleep until his mind is nothing but a ringing void. Any rational person on the outside would say, "Run!" Logic screams that after such an ordeal, he should hate this group. But something entirely opposite happens. Leon Festinger and his colleague, Elliot Aronson, called this phenomenon effort justification. A powerful dissonance explodes in the pledge's mind. On one hand, I am a smart, worthy person. On the other, the irrefutable fact, I voluntarily allowed myself to be subjected to humiliating acts for the sake of this group. To resolve this unbearable conflict, the brain finds the only way out. It cannot change the past. It cannot undo the humiliation. but it can radically reevaluate the goal. Your psyche makes an unconscious but ironclad conclusion: if I went through so much suffering for this, then this group must be incredibly important, exclusive, and elite. The harder the trial, the higher the value of the reward in your eyes. And here is the most important part. This is not an accidental side effect. It is a deliberate technique of social engineering. The leaders of such groups, from army drill sergeants to gurus of questionable self-help seminars, understand this principle, either intuitively or consciously. The more you invest, money, time, emotion, suffering, the more you will value the result. Not because it is objectively good, but to justify your sunk costs. This is a psychological alchemy that works everywhere, in exclusive clubs, in expensive personal growth courses, and even in toxic relationships you can't seem to leave. We are made to suffer so that we will value the cage we have entered. So we see how your own brain, your chief protector, shields you from the unpleasant truth about your own decisions. It constructs elaborate illusions to make you feel comfortable and consistent. But what happens when someone else learns to press these internal hidden buttons? This mechanism of self-justification is not only your personal shield. It is a key, a master key to mass manipulation. Imagine a devoted supporter of a political candidate. He's sitting in front of a screen, hearing the roar of the crowd. Suddenly, his candidate says something that completely 180 degrees contradicts a statement he made just a week ago. What happens in the voter's mind? An alarm signal flashes, almost physically palpable, like a shot of adrenaline. But instead of thinking my candidate is lying or incompetent, his brain instantly, with the speed of a reflex, gets to work. His words were probably taken out of context. This is a clever, strategic move that we common folk just don't understand yet. He meant something else entirely. It's a metaphor. The brain doesn't analyze the facts. It generates rescue narratives to preserve its loyalty to a choice already made. This is not accidental. It is a refined technology. In social psychology and sales, it's called the foot-in-the-door technique. A salesperson asks you for a small favor, like answering a single question or holding a brochure. You agree. This tiny action creates a micro-commitment. Now, to avoid contradicting your first action, I am a helpful person, you are more likely to agree to the next, more significant step. It works the same way in politics. First, you're asked to sign a harmless online petition, then to like a page. Every small yes forces your beliefs to adjust to justify that action. And before you know it, you're no longer just a sympathizer, but a convinced, fervent supporter. And here is the main, chilling paradox. We are most vulnerable to lies and self-deception not before we make a decision, but immediately after. The very moment we make a choice, buy the car, vote for the candidate, join the fraternity, our brain switches from truth-seeking mode to confirmation-seeking mode. In that instant, our chief ally, rational thought, is locked in a cage. The anterior cingulate cortex, your error detector, sounds the alarm. But the prefrontal cortex is already busy not with correction, but with justification. We are no longer searching for truth. We are searching for peace. We have disassembled this mechanism into its smallest parts, like a watchmaker laying out all the gears on a velvet cloth. From the sudden trigger to the deceptive, fragile illusion of harmony. We have seen how it protects our ego and how others use it to pull our strings. Now that we know how this phantom machine inside us works, one last and most important question remains. Let's walk this path one more time, but now at the speed of a nerve impulse. It all starts with a trigger, the collision of two ideas in your head. A century in 1959, social psychologists Leon Festinger and James Carlsmith conducted their famous $1 versus $20 experiment. But they didn't just discover another psychological effect for textbooks. They gave humanity a cold, merciless mirror. A mirror in which we saw that our mighty mind is not an impartial judge in robes seeking truth. More often, it is a brilliant, eloquent lawyer hired by our own actions to defend them at any cost, regardless of the facts. All our lives we are taught to be consistent and rational. But what if this very pursuit of consistency is a trap? Perhaps acknowledging our own irrationality, our capacity for self-deception, is the highest, most difficult form of rationality. True strength isn't in never making a mistake. It's in finding the courage to withstand the psychological blow of admitting a mistake without letting that knowledge shatter your identity. To admit, yes, I was wrong, and to recalibrate your internal compass. And now, a question for you. After everything you've heard, look inside yourself. What scares you more, the sharp but honest pain of admitting your own mistake, or the warm, soothing, but false comfort of continuing to believe in something that might be untrue? Type pain or comfort in the comments.